Welcome to the Procurement Software Podcast, where we aim to educate and inspire you about how technology is changing and shaping our profession. The truth is, there's never been a more exciting time to be in procurement, but only if you're one of those organizations that's embracing the change and driving new developments. And this podcast is all about giving you the tools to help you get there. So buckle up and let's get right into this week's show. Yes, hello, and a very warm welcome to the Procurement Software Podcast. We're back with Series 6 in our new monthly podcast format, and a couple of little things that we're switching up this series, one of which is we're going to be doing a lot more guest episodes in this series. And the first one is actually bringing back a former guest who is actually joining the Procurement Software Podcast royalty today, because he's one of only 3 people now who have been on the show 3 times, along with the distinguished Joël Collin-Demer and Sarah Scudder. I'd like to welcome Sheldon Mydat, founder and CEO of Suppeco, to that club. Sheldon.
Hello.
Congratulations.
It's great to be back. Thank you for having me again. I'm honoured. In such fine company. What can I say?
Yeah. We're going to be talking a little bit about AI in SRM today. You've been doing some interesting work together with Microsoft in terms of developing that, which we're going to dig into a little bit later. But first of all, let's set the scene. I'm going to ask you what I ask every guest that I bring on now, which is the tip of the icebreaker question. And that is, you've just started as a CPO, head of procurement in mid-sized business, and you've got a completely greenfield landscape with no tech. And by way of a miracle, you've managed to convince your CFO to give you $50,000 to go out and spend on some procurement technology. What would you spend the money on? You don't say put it in Bitcoin.
I wouldn't put it in Bitcoin. I've wasted enough money on Bitcoin and other things in crypto. Anyway, what would I do? Gosh, well, I wouldn't go out and buy tech straight away, that's for sure. Oh my God. Although, are we allowed to say our own software?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah. Gregory from Apador said his own software.
Well, do you know, the first thing I would say is let's not buy the software yet. Let's look at a supply management framework. Let's do a maturity model assessment, a modern one, which includes digitalization, because the older frameworks didn't. And obviously, if you're doing that exercise now, it really has to include digitalization. So that's the first thing I would do. So we'd look at segregation, segmentation, governance, performance, risk management, collaboration, digitalization, spend visibility, data visibility. So we'd go through all of these exercises. We'd go through an assessment, see exactly where we were. Then we kind of know where to go with it. And then I'd say, right, let's hire Suppeco. I jest, but
would you spend external budget on doing that initial assessment, though, or would you be confident in being able to do that assessment in-house? Because I know that's an interesting angle to take, that one. Because I get completely where you're coming from, but do you think you need to bring in an external party to do that competently and in an unbiased manner, or would you be confident to be able to run that internally?
Well, me personally, I'd be confident to run that internally, but that's a curveball. So I didn't want to answer the question that way.
All righty. So we've already established that you're going to go out and buy your own software. So that's a good place to start would be, give us a brief overview of what Suppeco does and where it fits into the SRM space, because SRM is quite a broad church currently. And I kind of feel that while initially SRM was often popped into your head when you thought of supplier due diligence, I think it's moving slightly now, and we're kind of looking at it now more at sort of vendor lifecycle management, which I know is sort of more into where Suppeco fits. So maybe just give a quick walkthrough of what you do.
You're right. It has been around for years, hasn't it? But let's be honest, SRM of old wasn't really tech. It was more about spreadsheets and PowerPoints and a bit of a concept, a woolly concept at best. There wasn't really any tech that did it. It was highly subjective, nailing the proverbial jelly at the wall, And most CPOs, we mentioned CPOs before, were kind of deferring that kind of activity in favour of a more addressable approach to driving value, because they could identify those savings that were locked into contracts, etc. Procurement, supply chain was an overhead, was viewed as an overhead. So the overriding emphasis would be on driving costs down, That's what you do with overheads generally. And purist procurement of old, say of old, because that's also an area that's changing a lot, their raison d'etre would have been to drive costs down as well, to reduce costs. So you've got these two big barriers to entry for early SRM. And consequently, push the curve. A lot has changed. But when you look at the SRM market of old, as I said, in terms of the tech that did start to come through, it was very, very much about KPI dashboard. You speak to CPOs. Yeah, we've seen, and we speak to a lot of CPOs, and I know a lot of CPOs, and they invariably say, things floating around the same theme. We've seen SRM, and none of it really does relationships. It's KPI dashboard. And you kind of get it, right? Because when you look at those big barriers to entry driving the market, tech addresses, product market fit works to the market. And so you've consequently got something that's very numbers driven. But things are changing very, very much, thanks in no small part, ironically, to the pandemic, where everything changed course, I'd say. And SRM really did start to come to prominence simply because more and more organizations were recognizing that they needed to do something, in fact, driven by the analysts out there from McKinsey to Gartner and everybody in between, saying that procurement and supply chain need to focus, they need to look up rather than down. They need to look up into investing into relationship-driven resilience rather than just focusing down on the numbers. And that's become a real existential thing, almost an imperative for business now. In fact, you look at SRM, and the analysts now, market data analysts, are saying that the SRM market is looking like an $8 billion global market value by 2030, 12.5% CAGR growth rate year on year. So it's a major growth area. And here's the thing, relationships are becoming substantive. And that's where, and this is, getting to the answer in a very long way, I imagine. But what we do is to focus on the relationship layer. We've created something that really creates a substantive, a digital relationship layer. Okay, now this is where we differ from spreadsheets and PowerPoints and the tech of old. We absolutely double down on creating a digital relationship layer. It enables us to take all of that relationship stuff that happens. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't live inside a contract. We live in the operational ether. That's where relationships happen. As we know, relationships require structure, boundaries in order to be functional, in order to be manageable, in order to be measurable. This is the entire reason we've created a digital relationship layer so that we can compartmentalize operational engagement.
So I think most people listening to this would be able to resonate with the fact that supplier relationship management is not just quantitative, and you have to bring in some qualitative measures as well. And I think anyone that's done a frontline category management role will be able to relate to the fact that we've all had a vendor that was perhaps a pain in the bum to deal with commercially, but operations used to love them because their operational KPIs, or just even the way that they dealt with people on a relationship perspective was really, really good. How do you take that from being an emotional feeling or, a way that you approach a relationship just on a day-to-day basis, the way that you might talk or correspond with someone, and the way that you maintain that day-to-day business and operational relationship into an actual piece of software? I mean, how can you bring in pillars or modules that enable you to be able to visualize that in some way?
So let me unpack that a bit. Number one of the key drivers for Suppeco is to create this digital relationship layer, to compartmentalize, create structure within the relationship space, because we don't live inside the contract. We live in the operational ether. 90% of company data, according to IDC, consists of unstructured operational data. Kind of what we're doing now. We're speaking on a call. If we were transcribing this call, it would become data that we could then analyze. And so much of what we do happens in the operational ether. It's a treasure trove of value that we've essentially ignored for many, many years because we've been focusing down on the numbers. There's a key thing that's been picked up by a number of our customers, and it centers around narrative. And you just picked up on 4 pillars as well. And this is how it all hangs together. SRM platforms of old, or in the main, have been different flavors of KPI dashboards, showing you the reds and the greens and the 99%, et cetera, et cetera. And that's great, but it's pretty finite, okay? What's really, really important is why you're red and how you get from red to green and why it's happened and how you get through that. That's narrative. That's the journey.
And you can't put that in a spreadsheet, can you? I get where you're coming from.
You can't do that in a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are important, but we all know that what's the old saying, that the destination, the journey is so much more interesting than the destination. It tells you so much more. And all the learning is done through the journey, not from the destination. And that's that's the crux of what we do. But in order to make that possible, we need to create an operational relationship layer rather than something that just supports lots of reports. You need to be able to create this dynamic, very important, a dynamic operational relationship layer with the benefit of the technology helps us to track and create a dynamic governance showing how engagement is playing out across the ecosystem. Very hard to articulate it, but suffice to say that it's articulate without showing you it. I mean, you've seen it anyway. I know you have a few times actually, but it's all about creating an infrastructure. You mentioned 4 pillars. So we break the relationship layer down into 4 main areas: relationship, commercial, projects, and service. And a lot happens. I mean, that pretty much, if you think of those 4 areas, you could actually say any engagement that you can think of, any supplier engagement, it doesn't matter what you're buying or selling or anything, any of the dynamics around it, you could break that engagement down into those 4 main areas. There's a lot of really, really good stuff that happens in there. Suffice to say for now, as I was saying, it's all about driving. One of the key areas is driving that narrative. If we were to break down the value between narrative and KPI dashboards, I'd say it's 75% to 25%.
Interesting.
One is dynamic. One is the story unfolding, course correction along the way. Dashboards are all about reports. They're retrospective for a start. What we do isn't retrospective. It's forward-looking. It enables us to course correct along the way rather than fix something after the event. Very, very important. Very important.
Where would you typically then, if we take that analysis that 75% is not coming from dashboards and hard KPIs, if we're bringing now with the benefit now of having the technology that can pull this type of data, the data, and that can take unstructured data and try and make sense of it, give anyone that's listening to this some examples of where you would typically be able to pull that data from in terms of the different sources that they may have of where that data is sitting that's not in a spreadsheet or an SQN module of an ERP system.
Yes, so, and there's a lot of it. I mean, if we're saying circa 90% of a company's data is operational data, unstructured data, then you're looking at documentation, commentary, stakeholder information, not personal information, but drivers, motivating, input, email.
Yeah.
Whether it's Teams chat, Slack chat, different channels. You've got all of this information. When I say documentation, RFX data, RFX documentation.
Yeah.
Just as an example.
Teams is a big one, isn't it? I mean, because with email, at least theoretically, if someone leaves the company or if someone goes on maternity leave or whatever, you can get access to their inbox. Whether or not you're going to troll through it is another question entirely, but at least theoretically you can get access to it. Nobody's going through people's Teams chats, are they?
No.
I mean, theoretically, IT has access to it, but, I can't think of any example of when someone's taken on a new role and they've accessed people's Teams chat or Skype for Business as it was back in the day.
It certainly was.
Doesn't happen, does it?
No, you don't need to. This is the whole thing. You don't need to. So first of all, important to note that all of this information, we don't go out and we don't connect to email and go out trawling, people's email or within their network. It doesn't work that way. This is a private. Suppeco works on a private tenant on a multi-tenancy basis. Everything happens within a private tenancy environment. The data comes in to the environment. I won't go into too much detail about how everything works because we don't have time, obviously. But this is about there's so much here, isn't there? I mean, you talked about qualitative data before. That's a very, very important point as well. So, just looking at the AI here, the generative AI and the partnership that we've got with Microsoft, we're an Azure native cloud platform, a multi-tenanted platform, which is very important. We take data security very, very seriously. We've also partnered with Microsoft, work behind the scenes to workshop the improvement of contextuality, which is a big thing for Gen AI. Prompt engineering, it's become a skill in its own right, hasn't it? Let's face it. There's a lot of data coming in to the platform, whether it be email, documentation, stakeholder management information, Teams chat, Slack channels, different formats of data that all come into the platform.
You say there's a lot of talk out there around whether Gen AI is a bit of a white elephant, whether it's indeed relevant to a lot of procurement tech platforms. And, I think there are some fairly credible challenges to that whole topic. But I do believe it has a place. Obviously, you do too, if you've put budget and marketing dollars and development dollars behind it. So just walk me through perhaps some use cases or some particular examples of where generative AI is able to pull a result that other forms of technology or automation or machine learning are just simply not able to do the same thing.
Yes, I'd agree with all of what you just said in terms of the skepticisms around some of the use cases. I think it's rolled out too much. I think that good BAs and good, Power BI packs can get to the same results in terms of analyzing quantitative data. I think the key for what we do is around the qualitative data. So with Suppeco or Suppeco, which is the Gen AI module, the partnership with Microsoft to actually drive that capability, that is all about bringing these multi-formats of data into the platform and then being able to analyze that data. And I think we are, in terms of SRM, with 90%, the whole thing about SRM is it was all about the numbers before. Now it's very much around driving relationship-driven resilience. I mean, SRM has really come to prominence, and that's not because it's getting better at managing numbers. That's because it's getting better at managing relationships. The stuff that lives outside of the contract, above the contract layer. And that's all the unstructured stuff, the stuff that we live, the stuff, the kind of area that we live in. So we bring all of that information in. We're able to analyze, ask it so many different things. It's uncovering, bringing us insights that were previously unavailable, whether it be understanding the essence of a negotiation, helping us to spot risks, helping us to capture the essence of a relationship and then dropping it into an RFP, a modern version of an RFP, in my view as well. But let's not get started on that. But, understanding propensity to different types of risk, culture fit, for example, using the data to dynamically create risk analysis. We do that a lot. And you've seen that yourself when we spoke previously. So on Suppeco, we create, we've got KPI trending reports as well. We do KPI trending reports as well, of course. But we can also dynamically look at KPI metrics as well, rather than you can do both. Okay. Interestingly, we didn't design the AI module to do the KPI metrics, but it's really good at doing them dynamically.
The example that you showed me as well with the tabular form, I really liked that. I mean, obviously, I know we can't demo it. It's a podcast, but I liked how it presents the actual data, and you could essentially copy and paste that into a PowerPoint if you had to go out and report on something for a QBR or for a business unit review.
Yes, you could. That's absolutely right. Interestingly, so the print function was something that we used to be able to print a PDF, and we kind of wanted to be full screen and not, pay PDF printouts and God knows what else. But we're actually bringing that back in. Anyway, that's a sidebar. But yes, you're absolutely right. There's a very, very dynamic way of creating the data. And we've done a lot of work to really contextualize, to make the information so much more meaningful. Very, very important that we get this right. We've launched it as a beta product. Okay. So, and listen, Google was in beta for 5 years, right? So we're okay to call it as a beta product. Whilst we learn, we're inviting, and we've got a few customers on board at the moment, helping us as beta customers on Suppeco as well. So yeah, the use cases are pretty amazing, actually. I mean, if you've got, one of the things that you could do on Suppeco is to bring in your stakeholder teams and to put your stakeholder drivers, best way to manage, et cetera, all of that information that surrounds your stakeholders, which is amazingly fruitful when it comes to reconciling that with the performance of projects and the efficiency of delivery, et cetera, etc. It enables you to marry up drivers and motives and motivations, et cetera, efficiencies with your services. So you can see where support is needed, do you see what I mean? So it's just a really, really good way of understanding qualitative aspects of service delivery. And at the end of the day, SRM truly is a big chunk of it is around the qualitative, non-contractual aspect of engagement that's been missing all these years. It's a big area for us. So yeah, and it's borne out in our results as well. Some of the case studies that are coming out, not on AR, not on Suppeco because it's too early, but the very fact that we work in this qualitative space, driving narrative, driving operational excellence through better relationships, it's an ideal foundation for everything to come.
I think especially for companies that are a bit more forward thinking and more long-termist in their approach, especially companies that want to maintain a degree of supplier loyalty and build that long-term partnership with their core vendors. Not every company has this ethos, but we tend, the trend I'm seeing is that we're starting to move in this direction and become a lot less transactional. At least, the upper quartile of businesses in terms of their performance are. So no, I get where you're coming from. I think there's a couple of things that I wanted to tackle before I wrap this up that's probably going to be on the tip of everyone's tongue that are listening to this. The first one obviously is around data privacy concerns. When you look at, and when you hear the word Gen AI, everyone then immediately thinks in the corporate context or, cybersecurity, data privacy.
Yes.
Talk me through a little bit of what you're doing there and how you differentiate between, the data that's internal and the data that's external.
Yes, you're right. There are concerns around confidentiality of data. We don't train our model on customer data. Simple as that. We just don't. Very important fact. We operate a multi-tenanted environment. Every single customer has their own tenant or set of tenants. Because there are different ways that there's a lot of versatility into the way that you can license them. But the fact is, we operate a multi-tenanted license environment. So everything is pulled in to the environment. Okay. Number one, as I said, we don't train the model on people's data, on customers' data or their suppliers' data. In fact, everything that we do, we split training data down into two elements. We've got background training data, foreground training data. The background training data looks at the kind of infrastructure or the building blocks of, well, it's good practice, building blocks of supplier engagement models for organizations. So, you've got the names of your suppliers, some of the rudimentary information of a customer's supply chain. Okay. The things that don't change. The front end is the operational data that we've been talking about. All of this live, and it's all live. Everything we do is live. We put all this data through as conversations happen, as things happen. And the AI, so if you think about that live data almost as a streaming service, it's streaming through. The AI lens analyzes the streaming data. It's taking it in, it's analyzing it. And once it's through, it's gone. It's not being studied and retained to help train our model at all. Doesn't work that way. So very, very important. So so for example, if somebody, and this isn't unique to EQ, this is to Suppeco, this has always been the case. If somebody leaves, for example, so there are a number of ways of locking down data, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, straight away, if someone's using the platform through single sign-on, for example, and they have a leaver, their access is automatically going to be removed as soon as they don't have their single sign-on access anymore for a start. So one example of locking data down. But another way of locking data down without losing the data, very important, is to anonymize the data. So we have a system in place. If somebody leaves, but the data, because you don't want to lose the data, it's very important a lot of the time. So we have a system of anonymizing the data. Any reference to names and identities are gone. The data itself remains. But we've always done that, to be honest with you. So there are a number of different systems in place to control the flow of data. There's a lot of, we also use a lot of, RBAC controls and something called nuanced RBAC as well within the platform to control the flow of data into, we talked about 4 pillars, for example, relationship, commercial projects and service, that digital relationship infrastructure. Every single customer, every single supplier has their own version of that. They have their own complete end-to-end supplier environment. They all start the same. You don't have to change them. You can just use it out of the box. But that digital relationship environment, every single one of those different areas could contain entirely different communities of people, depending on where the service is happening. And so it's important this is why we've introduced something called nuanced RBAC, which is a way we control the flow of data, because you might have people involved in project A that have nothing to do with project B or C or D or whatever in another area. And so this is where nuanced RBAC comes in, but it also flows through, and all of these same data flow controls apply to EQ as well. There's a lot of protection built into that for a start.
And what about external data then, Sheldon? Is there a way to connect it to external data that could influence a supplier relationship? I'm just trying to think of an example, but things like financial stability or commodity prices that inevitably then are going to be flashpoints, and going into the more qualitative data, if there's quite an acrimonious negotiation going on over price, that's probably going to affect, and it shouldn't, but it probably will affect the day-to-day conduct of people in that relationship. So is there a way that you could marry those two together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it works as a standalone product with just SupEQ sitting on top of Suppeco, the core services. But yes, absolutely, you can give it access to other systems. I mean, Suppeco is an API first architecture anyway. We've already created a kind of orbit of API partnerships with other solution providers and etc. It's up to a specific customer what kind of data they want to give out. We won't just plug it all in until they say they want something plugged in. But we can surface that data if they want to bring it into the tenant.
So if they had, I'm just using a random example, but if they had a subscription to something like EcoVadis or Ditch Carbon or Dun & Bradstreet, and they wanted to bring that in, they could do, as long as they had their own licensing agreement.
Yes, so we do partner with Ditch Carbon, funnily enough. So yes, Craft and Market Dojo as well. There's information that comes from several places that can be analysed. Now, it's not as simple as we bring it in and we can analyse it. It's obviously we then obviously got partnerships in place with those other vendors, because it's information that they have a duty of care for as well. But so there are several considerations from a technical point of view. Yes, absolutely, we already do it, but it starts as a standalone, and we take it from there.
Are there any industry sectors that you're particularly strong in, or does a company need to be a certain size or level of complexity in their supply chain before there's really a justifiable ROI for them to invest into something like this?
Absolutely not. So the first thing I should say on that is it's very democratized software. Okay, so we're just bringing out an SME version of the platform, including EQ. And that's going to start at, I think, it starts at around £500 a month. Now, that's not taking away any functionality, because it's democratized software and it always will be. What we are doing is scaling down the amount of functionality. So, for example, we're scaling down the number of suppliers, the number of users, the number of KPIs available, the number of subcategories, different areas. But the functionality is absolutely there and not being removed. But a smaller company needs less of it.
Yeah, they'll have fewer suppliers. They'll have oftentimes less complex supply chains. So that module, when you launch it, then will have full Suppeco and SupEQ functionality, but it's just going to be capped in terms of the number of vendors or number of searches or data points that they're, yeah.
Correct. It's just is dialed down. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's very much, I mean, that's happening now, actually, in terms of the new pricing that's going out for SMEs. And it's not just, we've talked a lot around, obviously this is about AI and the stuff that we're doing in that space, because we are ideally placed to use the AI module to surface so much value. I mean, look, let's just say, you look at Gen AI, you look at ChatGPT, for example, and we're all used to ChatGPT now. what's ChatGPT's favorite food? Unstructured data, it basically scrapes the internet, doesn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah.
And that's all unstructured data. We are ideally placed to surface value from all of that customer data that's just, McKinsey have even said it, that the operational data is the next big play for Gen AI.
And it's the perfect use case for it, isn't it? I mean, everyone's saying, is there a use case for Gen AI? But that is the perfect use case. See, you're absolutely right that being able to take messy, unstructured data, and let's face it, most companies have it. To your point, 90, but no, was it the 25% of data is
90%?
90%, sorry, yeah, 70. What was it? 75% is qualitative rather than quantitative, and 90% of the data is unstructured. So I think those numbers give you the potential use case, and then it's just for a head of procurement or a CFO, it's been able to translate that into, okay, well, what does 2% better operational efficiency in my factory mean as a result of being able to do something with that unstructured data? And that's always going to be the challenging part, isn't it? But the logic behind that decision, you're absolutely right. With the numbers that you gave me, as long as you can translate that into business process improvements that you can execute from it, you should be able to make a convincing argument.
The landscape has changed. 2025 is going to be a big year for this new emerging versions of the technology that we've already been looking at in 2024. So the AIs of this world. And look, it's not a case of do you have it? It's a case of how do you use it? How real is this thing? What's the tangible value in what you're doing? And I am absolutely convinced that the tangible value in what we do with this within the SRM space, I know the words just fail me. It's an amazing use case for Gen AI, qualitative data in the operational space. And I would just say this quickly, as you mentioned transactional data. It's not all about being a mature organization that is ready to embrace this advanced collaborative technology. A lot of the stuff that we do, a lot of the smaller companies are very much in the foothills of SRM. They want to understand their data. They want to know who their suppliers are. They want to have a contract storage place. They want to know who their stakeholders are and do the fundamental. I wouldn't say the basics. I'd say the fundamentals. The fundamentals are, another way of saying fundamental is important. The important bits. So yeah, these are the key building blocks for us. Contract storage, repository, contract events management, understanding. I would say that, KPI management, we've got an amazing KPI creation suite. These things are all absolute key building blocks for everything that comes on top of that. And even if you are a company that is practicing advanced SRM in one place, the chances are you have other suppliers that are quite transactional, that maybe you run one or two KPIs across that category, and you take a look in at every month. We get that. We have many customers and situations where that situation exists. So it's an interesting space. It's a fantastic, actually.
I fully agree with you. And I think just to that point, as we look to wrap this up, part of that then increasingly is just going to be, you're going to have to have the right people within your organization that can take that data, that can interpret it, which is sort of your analyst part, and then be able to convince and market to the rest of the business and execute what you want to do. And I think that's where, I know we've spoken about this before, but that's where procurement often fall down, isn't it? With the influence and the stature that they have within a business. I think aside from the tech, I run a business all around procurement technology, but I'm not blind to the fact that a big reason why it often fails is just that the people and the personnel that are in procurement teams and how they're perceived within the rest of the business. And I think to your point, the data then stops becoming an excuse, doesn't it? I mean, I've used it in my previous corporate role as well. We've got crappy data, and we did have crappy data, but now it's becoming less and less of an excuse. I mean, I think it's still going to take a while for spend analytics platforms to do what they all say that they do. But with this example where you're taking unstructured, qualitative rather than quantitative data, I fully agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. To wrap this up, Sheldon, got a couple of quick fire questions that I ask everyone that comes on, just to get to know you a little bit more as a person and not just a tech founder. So first one is, if you could live anywhere in the world and money were no object, wherever?
Santa Monica. I love California for a start. I love it. And I love the lifestyle in Santa Monica. Last time I was there, riding my bike, rollerblading. I still got my rollerblades. I'm not very good at them anymore. But yeah, I would love to be back there on a longer term basis.
Okay. It was about 25 years ago when I went to Santa Monica, but it's changed a lot since then. And then finally, what's your favorite guilty pleasure? And there's only one rule here. You've got to keep it clean.
Okay. Guilty pleasure. Oh my God. Okay. Salami sandwiches.
Salami sandwiches.
I love salami.
We'll put that into the bank alongside Dan Gianfreda from Beach Street's Doner Kebab. That was his answer.
Is that Doner Kebab?
Okay. So if anyone would like to learn a little bit more, Sheldon, maybe wants to see a demo, where should we send them?
They can go to Suppeco.com. They can hit me up on LinkedIn. If they want to get a demo, come on board as beta customers to help us improve the model. Fantastic. We can do that too, but we're easy to find. Suppeco.com, SUPPECO.com. You know where I'm on LinkedIn.
And we'll link to all of those in the show notes for anyone that didn't catch that's maybe walking the dog or at the gym while they're listening to us. Sheldon, it's always a pleasure. Take care. Hopefully see you in London next time I'm back in the UK. Look after yourself. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. Take care. Bye.
Okay, that was AI and what generative AI can do in the SRM space, all around taking that messy, unstructured, qualitative data and being able to make some sense of it. So thank you very much for listening to the show, first in our new series with the new monthly format. Don't forget, if you want to grab our tech maps and see all of the different players that are out there in both SME, mid-market and enterprise pure tech, as well as some other Venn diagrams that we've got for specific categories, just head to store.procurementsoftware.site and download your print quality PDF completely free. We'll catch you again same time next month. Until then, take care and bye for now.